What up? Yeah. ManUp Friday coming at you with your boy Mike the Mentor. Welcome. We are talking the importance of ceremony in a man's life. We're going to get to that in a minute. You may be wondering why I'm suited and booted. It was really cool. I had the opportunity to volunteer at an event one of my family friends puts on. It's a widow's retreat, and just help, carry bags, park cars, open doors for these ladies. And it was interesting, helping these two ladies up to the room, and in the elevator, with tears in their eyes, they turned and thanked me for doing this and how much it meant to them. And I find that interesting. I don't know what it's like to be in their shoes. I can only imagine, going from having life with your husband, and then all of a sudden, now he's gone, and you're doing probably all or the majority of stuff, or all the stuff on your own. And you probably weren't doing all the stuff on your own before that. And just a little thing of having a door open for you, or your bags carried, or one of the ladies said, volunteering your Friday night to do this for somebody that you don't even know, was touching. And I don't say that to like kudos to me. I say that because it's cool, right? Like in society where it's frowned on more and more about doing things like that for women, right? Carrying their bags. What's up, Bob? Opening the door for them, right? And how it could make a huge difference in someone's life. And it's not about equality. It's not about women not being able to take care of themselves. What it's really about is about honor, right? And honoring them in that regard. So I just found that really cool. One lady shared with me her battery went dead before she was leaving, and she had never opened up a hood of a car before, right? So she had to open that up, figure out where the battery was at. I think she said she had like a little jump box that jumped her battery, and she was able to figure it out, right? She's strong, she's capable, intelligent woman, but just putting into perspective like those types of things, it's powerful. It's powerful, and it just it's good for me to have that perspective, and it just goes back to one of the things I believe strongly in. It's you never know what someone's dealing with, right, in their lives. On any given day, you could cross paths with one of these ladies and not know that they're a widow, and they're just, they're trying to find some sort of normalcy back to their lives, and feel, I guess, that honor, or feel like maybe they matter to someone else, or whatever feelings that they receive from those types of kind gestures of carrying their bag and opening the door for them, and stuff like that. So it's a really cool opportunity. I was privileged to be a part of it. So that's the intro. If you don't know me, Mike King, aka Mike the Mentor. Nothing fancy there. It's just the only thing I could think of when I thought of this page. So the whole purpose behind this page is for me to, one, share my story, because I think it's important, and two, it's to encourage men to answer the higher calling we have on our lives as fathers, as husbands, as friends, as leaders in our community. And I don't think it gets talked about enough in society today about the importance of being a man, and what real manhood looks like, what real masculinity looks like, because we've abused the crap out of it. We have not only abused it, we have run away from those responsibilities. We have not stewarded those things like we should have, and it's a shame. And we wonder why the world is like it is today, why we turn on the news and we see what we see, why we go outside of our homes into our community and experience some of the things that we experience. And we can't, the only person we can be responsible for is ourselves. And when we wake up in the mirror and we look this guy in the eyes in the morning and we say, okay, today's a new day and I'm going to do what I can to take responsibility in those areas, no matter how hard it is, then the world gets a little bit better. And if we all decide we're going to do that collectively and we work towards that, we can fix these problems and we can make this world a better place for our kids. Because right now, I mean, it's scary, it's crazy out there. And I'm not a fear monger. I'm one of the most optimistic, positive guys you'll ever meet. But at the same time, I'm a realist, and having kids kind of changes you. And I wonder what the world will be like for my kids. And it shouldn't be our kids' responsibility to hold us accountable. It should be our responsibility to hold ourselves accountable for what kind of legacy we're leaving. So I'll get off that. So ManUp Friday. ManUp Friday is extremely important. This is probably the highlight of my week, besides the Sunday sermon. And this is where we go through a workbook that I went through at a very critical time in my life. It's called The Quest for Authentic Manhood by Dr. Robert M. Lewis. And this was my first deep dive into what manhood needs to look like, actually thinking about these things, actually working through these things, actually deciding what I was going to do with these lessons and these principles. And I needed this because we were living in Chicago. We had just moved there from Michigan. I had told my wife about the truth about something that I had lied to up until that point. 2 weeks into our marriage, and I blew my marriage up. So I didn't start. How do I say this? So we moved to Chicago, and I wasn't at zero. I was like at -5, man. I dug a massive hole, and what do? I'm sitting in this hole, right? Kind of feeling sorry for myself, but stubborn as all get out because I didn't want to end up like my dad. I didn't want to not be there for my kids. I didn't want to not be there for my wife. Like, I never envisioned myself in that place, but here I am in that place, and I've got a decision to make. Am I going to run away and forsake my responsibility, as much as my wife hated me at that time, as much as she despised me and was trying to make sense of this man who supposedly loved her so much, could hurt her so bad? How could I mess with her mind like that, right? And I didn't know who I was, right? I didn't know if I wanted to be married, didn't know what I was doing. I was just drifting. And I was down in this hole, and I needed somebody to come in that hole and sit there with me, or stick their hand down there and say, hey man, like, enough of this BS. Like, I got you, let's go. I'm gonna help you get up out of this hole, and we're gonna do something about it. And through some circumstances, that happened. And I was invited to check this church out. And at this church, I saw them advertising for this thing that they were going to be doing through with men, and something inside spoke to me and was like, you need to go check that out. And I went and checked it out, and then I signed up for it, and I started down this path of meeting every week with these 6 guys that I knew nothing about, right, from all different walks of life. One guy was just going through a huge, horrible marriage, or a horrible divorce, where he just blew his family completely up and was selfish and was making all these decisions that he thought was good for him, and he only cared about himself. And another guy had just come out of divorce and now was married for the second time, and he was trying to navigate that. One guy had been married for like 30 years, another guy had been married for like 45 years. There was one guy that was single and was kind of dating somebody, and then there was me, right? So all these guys coming together like with one common goal, and that is to reflect on our lives and figure out this manhood thing and learn through these teachings how the things that we grew up with, that we experienced, the wounds that were brought upon us through situations in our life, some we had control over, some we didn't have control over, and how we needed to deal with those in an effective manner to be able to show up in our world presently and be authentic and be men. And what does that entail? What does that look like, right? Rejecting passivity, accepting responsibility, leading courageously, and then investing for eternity, right? Leaving a legacy for those who are coming behind us. So we set out on this 24-week course, and it changed my life. It absolutely changed my life, because you don't get this information anywhere else. You don't find, they don't teach this stuff in school. You don't get this in college. You may get a little tiny bit here and there, like if you go to church, depending on where you go, or there's a little bit of this out there on the internet that guys or people on podcasts touch on every now and then, but you never really get this deep dive that takes you to the edge. And yeah, that's right, Larry Kazak, baby. That takes you to the edge, and you have a decision. You don't know what's over that cliff. You don't know what's down below. And you got to make a decision. Do I stay where I'm at presently in my life? And do I keep running from all these things that happen to me? Or do I accept responsibility for where I'm at and realize that I have a choice to do something about it? And yeah, it's going to be scary as hell. It's going to be hard. But I'm willing to do it. And then you just leap. You jump, not knowing where you're going to land. And that's what I did. I didn't know where my marriage was going to end up. I would literally come home 2-3 times a week, and my wife would have all her stuff packed in these bags and have it in the middle of the floor in our apartment, and would say, I can't do this anymore. I can't trust you. I need to leave. And I would have to talk to her and listen to her and do whatever I could to help her see that that I could be worthy, that I could be a real man. And it was a long process, man. It was a long process, years and years and years and years. Don't get me wrong, there was a lot of good moments in there, but if my wife would say this too, there was more bad moments than there was good moments. She didn't do that. I did that. And I had to take responsibility for that. Okay. The hard way. I could have ran. I could have gotten divorced. Probably met somebody else. Could have. But that wasn't the choice for me. I needed this. I needed to hear this. So I come to you sharing these same things. Not to say that I'm better than you. Not to say that I've achieved some status. No, I bring this to you to encourage you, to let you know that, brother, like, this fight, this life, these things we deal with is about more than us. It's about our wives. It's about our kids. It's about our friends. It's about the people we come in contact with every single day that get to know us and feed off us and be affected by us and the power that we actually have in all these different situations, and how we can show up and be present and change our communities, change our families, change our family history by refusing to quit And by facing these hard things that happen to us, I can't guarantee what will happen to your marriage if you're in a bad spot. I can't guarantee what will happen if you're having a rough time at your job. I can't guarantee you what will happen if you're not in a place that you should be physically. But I can guarantee you this. If you will have courage and you will deal with these things and you will take this serious, you will become a better man. Hands down. Won't happen. I mean, it's that's the only choice, or that's the only result that's going to happen from you making those choices. Is you will be a better husband, you will be a better father, you will be a better friend, you will be a better leader in the community. So this is not my material. This is Dr. Lewis's material. He gets 100% credit for this. Changed my life. And this stuff that I'm sharing is changing other men's life. So tonight we're talking about ceremony and the power of ceremony. All right? In Western society, we are one of the only societies in the world that does not have a rite of passage, a coming to age ritual or ceremony for boys who are transitioning into men. Other than if you're outside of the, if you're Jewish, right, you have a bar mitzvah. Yeah, that's right, we do. It's not just about us, it's about our kids and our grandkids and their kids. Got that right, Mr. V. So, man, where was I? So, you know, you go anywhere and you ask the men in the room, when did you become a man? And you will get a multitude of different answers, right? When I smoked my first cigarette, when I drank a beer for the first time, when I slept with a woman, when, I could pay my own bills, when I bought my first house, when I turned 18, when I turned 21. All these things that society says this is when you become a man. But yet, through the things that I am privileged to be a part of, I meet men at all ages, from 18 all the way into their 60s, that have no idea when they became a man. Some of them don't even know really if they are men and what that looks like and what that means, because of all the confusion and everything that's out there. So I'm going to share my screen with you. I'm going to do a quick review of what we talked about last week, and then we'll get into tonight's super short for tonight in terms of that teaching and that content. So Father and Sons Part 2. Here's me and my son Anthony. Little go-kart action at Craig's Cruisers. You know, he was 7 when he came into my life, and here I am, going from having no kids to having a 7-year-old, and the responsibility of that, right? And he didn't know his dad, and I didn't really know my dad. I mean, it's crazy the things that God does, right? Brings us two together, and now I'm his example of what a man should be like. I'm his example of what a father should be like. How do I navigate that? How do I show up and encourage him and lead him both in word and in deed? You know, all these questions, especially when I didn't have a great example inside of my house. But the one thing I did have is I did have great examples outside of my house in the mentors and the men that God filled my life with. So there's two ways you can learn. You can learn on your own, or you can learn vicariously, which means watching someone else do something and learn from what they did or they didn't do. So quick review here from last week. We talked about the power of dad, right? And how we as men, as dads, play this awesome role in our kids' lives. And that there's 3 types of parenting. There's the absent parenting, right? Someone who isn't there, right? Whether that's physically, mentally, spiritually, or emotionally. And then we have the engaged parent, right? The parent that is there and they are involved in their life, but they're just kind of winging it. And then we have the strategic parent, the one who foresees the future and casts vision and strategically thinks about ways that they can prepare their kids for what is coming ahead, right? Equips them with the most important ways of life, anticipates what they will need for each phase of life and gives it to them, whether they're toddler, adolescent, in their teenage years, young adult, marriage. And then we talked about dad is destiny. Dad is and always will be a powerful figure in a son's life, and that bond that is created between a father and the son. And then Proverbs 17:6, right? The glory of sons is their fathers. Nothing is truer. I don't care who you are. Even at the points when I was maddest at my dad, I wanted my dad in my life. I craved for him to be in my life. I wanted his influence. I wanted his presence. Despite all the times he lied straight to my face and didn't follow through with his words. So then we talked about the 3 ingredients of strategic fatherhood. The dig, right? Dad's compelling character. And then, once again, every son wants to be like their dad. So how do we go about as fathers instilling good character into our sons? Like, what do we want our sons to know? Like, what life lessons do we want them to realize? Do we want them to know that their word should be their bond? Do we want them to be a person of integrity? Do we want them to be a person of character? Do we want them to be a person that when they shake somebody's hand, they follow through on what they shook over? And then we got the set, right, which is dad's clear instruction. What things are we instructing our sons on? Are we teaching them how to change the oil on a car? Are we teaching them where the gasoline goes on a lawnmower? Are we teaching them how to mow the grass? Are we teaching them how to change a tire? Are we teaching them how to grill hamburgers and hot dogs? Make tacos? Are we teaching them the importance of making their bed and picking up after themselves and being able to clean their own bathroom? All these types of things, right? These instructions that all young boys need. What essential information, and I would say what essential wisdom do I want him to leave home with, right? My grandpa beat this into my head like a drum. He would always say, are you a leader or a follower? And I would get so annoyed by it. And I would just tell him what he wanted to hear just so he would be quiet. And I'd say, I'm a leader. And he would sit up in his recliner and he would stare me straight in the eyes. And he would say, okay, don't tell me, show me. Right? And there's something powerful behind that, and powerful from that generation's characteristics and beliefs, right? They weren't talkers, they were doers. They went out and did stuff. And if they did say something, you best believe they backed it up. You don't find that much today. Then there's the spike, dad's creative ceremonies, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight, and in the following week, is how do we create these moments, these memorable moments for our sons that usher them into the next phase of their life, so they can clearly draw a line in the sand as to they're moving from this phase in their life to this next phase in their life. And then how can we give instruction in a meaningful way that they will remember and that they will move into. So tonight, the power of ceremonies, right? So the first thing is memorable ceremonies are costly, right? And it's well worth it. This isn't some, I'm going to buy a cake, give my son some present, and then we're gonna celebrate, and here you go, son, you're now becoming a man. No, this is something that you are intentional about, and that you make special, and you put money behind, right? You spend money on this because this is meaningful. And think about all the memorable ceremonies you have in your life, right? You have, for some, baptism, right? There's some people that spend money on that and make that a memorable moment. There's obviously graduation, right? If you're fortunate enough to have a graduation party, whether that's from high school or from college. And then you have probably the most expensive event you have in your life, other than a funeral, but that's no longer your life, is marriage, right? The amount of effort that goes into that, the amount of money that goes into that. Now, I'm not saying you have to spend that type of money, but I'm just saying, like, if you want to make this and leave an impression on somebody, on your son, you are going to spend some money, right? You're going to spend some money on the food. You're going to spend some money on these other things we're about to talk about, right? You're going to open up your pocketbook and you are going to put your money where your mouth is, in essence. Quick story, right? So my sister is a wedding planner slash floral designer, and she's been doing it for, like, I don't know, forever, like 10, 12 years. And last summer she got invited to this massive wedding, like in Arkansas or something like that. And it was this family, and the father, and so the husband and the bride and the groom were trying to find a place to get married, and they couldn't find one that satisfied the bride. So the father, right, reaches into his pocketbook and he ends up building a facility, banquet hall or what, I can't remember, chapel, whatever, I can't remember. But he spends like 7 figures building this place for his daughter, right? And afterwards they end up turning it into a business. But think of what he told his daughter with that gesture. Right, obviously he was fortunate enough to have the money to be able to do that, but think of what that spoke to his daughter. You are worth it. You are worth it. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I didn't make the rules, right? Money is important in our society. Money ascribes value to things. And when you're willing to fork over money to make it a memorable ceremony, you best believe that it'll be memorable. Next week I'm going to talk about what I did specifically for my son and how he still talks about it to this day. So second thing, memorable ceremonies ascribe value to the person being celebrated, right? And that's the importance of taking time to plan this out. And what this looks like. It's one thing to go to graduation and you get your name called and you walk across the stage, some people clap, and you get your diploma, right? So on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of value being celebrated, that's probably a 2. But it's a completely other thing to have a wedding where you're in front of the people that love you the most, and you are letting them take part in this most important part of your life, and the value that ceremony is ascribing to not only you and that other person, right? Because you're pledging your life to them. You are entering into a covenant. Not a promise, a covenant. And the value and the importance that has, right? So when you're thinking about a ceremony for your son, I would encourage you to think about a wedding and think about, how can I bring that same type of commitment, that same type of importance to what I'm going to do for them, and how can I celebrate them in the same way, right? Make them feel important, make them feel valued, make them feel cherished, make them feel special. C, memorable ceremonies employ symbols, right? Symbols are extremely important in every culture. They're symbols that make people think good thoughts. They're symbols that make people think bad thoughts. Symbols are associated with feelings. So what symbols can you employ in a ceremony to get the feeling across that you're trying to get across? You know, you think about different things, right? Like you think of Navy SEALs, right? They have the I think it's the eagle's wing and the anchor, the eagle's wings and the anchor, right? Like that's a symbol, and that stands for a lot of things. Like, don't mess with me because I'm a bad dude and I could whoop you. It symbolizes the toughness and the struggle that those men had to go through to earn the right to wear that. It's a powerful symbol, very powerful. You know, so what symbols can you bring into your ceremony to use and to ascribe different feelings or emotions to the ceremony? So D, this is probably on this list. I would say this is the second most important one out of all 5 that we're going to discuss. And that is, memorable ceremonies involve others who are significant to those being celebrated. Right? Think about your son's life and the people that are in his life that are the most influential, or that you want them to play a more influential part, right? Who can you invite to the ceremony to speak truth into your son, to give your son encouragement, to maybe share some wisdom with your son about things he wants to think about going into the next phase of his life, right? Who will you bring around your son, right? It's almost like this. There's this old thing, or this old king, right? His name was Arthur. And it was Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, right? And those were the guys that were most influential in his life. And him, along with those guys, talked about things, made decisions, right? He valued their input, he valued their wisdom, and he sought that, right? Whose wisdom who can you bring around your son to impart wisdom into their life in a memorable way that won't be forgotten and that will change their life? All right, last one. E, memorable ceremonies empower a life with vision. This is number 1 on this list. I cannot tell you, I'm getting goosebumps, how important this is to have as a man, as a boy, to have someone come alongside you, ideally your father, right? And to speak vision into your life. What does that mean? That means to call out the things that that person sees in you, the giftings that you have, the promise that you have, the purpose that you have, to call those things out of you, and then to call you to those things, to walk in those things, to sharpen those things, to fulfill those things. I don't know what it is. It's like gravity. It's like the law of reaping and sowing. It's just this universal thing. Like, it just exists. And when you tap into that, when you do that for somebody, right, for your son, and you put that out there, words have power. Words do not return void. They go out and they accomplish a purpose every single time. Every single word. And when you put those words out there, how your son gets drawn to those like a magnet, right? Like how it shapes his life, how it calls on him, right? my grandpa was doing that when he was saying, are you a leader or a follower? He was putting that out there for me. And he was calling me to that. And even though I found it annoying, it was drawing to me like a magnet. Because wherever I would go, and every situation that I would get in, there would be those words. Are you a leader or a follower? And sometimes I made the choice to follow it, or to be a leader. Sometimes, Lord knows, I made the choice to be a follower. But he was casting that vision for me. He was putting that out there. And then later in my life, that vision was calling me forward. It was calling me into its purpose. Right? So this is the most powerful thing. And I can tell you from experience that this one will make the biggest difference. It will have the most impact on your son's life. And you'll see this play out next week when I share and I talk about the ceremony that I did for my son, that I did for him. So that's it for tonight. I appreciate you guys tuning in and watching this. So next week we're gonna talk about actual ideas for ceremonies. So I strongly encourage you to be here for that, and to pay attention, because this is a game changer, right? So I gave you a lot of good stuff tonight, or Dr. Lewis did, and then next week we're going to actually flesh it out. You're going to see real examples of what that looks like, and then I'm encouraging you to take that and don't just know it, right? Apply it to your son's life, and you can definitely apply this to your daughter's lives as well, right? This is our role as fathers, to do this for our children. So the question is are we going to step up to the plate, and are we going to be intentional, and are we going to make this happen, or are we just going to be like, good information, it's cool, sounds good, okay, what you got next week? Come on, man, don't be that guy. You wouldn't be here if you were that guy. You wouldn't be watching this, right? I'm talking to men that want to make a change. I'm talking to men that want to step up to the plate. I'm talking to men who want to take back what was stolen from them. I'm talking to men who want to change their family tree, who want to change their children's lives, who want to change their children's lives, who want to change the third and fourth and fifth and sixth generation to come. And it all starts right here. How cool would it be for you to start this in your family? For your kids to remember this their entire lives. And then when they have kids, they do the same thing. And then all of a sudden we're 4 generations later, and the sons know that when they turn a certain age, this is what's going to happen. This is what they should expect. And then that becomes a normal thing. How cool would that be? And it would all have started with you. So that's it. Next week we'll flesh that out. I'll lay that out for you, show you what it looks like, what I did, and then the choice will be yours on what you want to do from it. We'll talk about more about also what's age appropriate, and the different ages that you can do these types of things at, and all the ideas surrounding that. So once again, as always, guys, I appreciate you guys being here with me. I want to remind you of one more thing, and that's men are not born, men are made. And we as fathers play the most significant part in that, right? We're the guy with the chisel and the hammer, and we get the privilege of chiseling away at our kids, at the block that our kids come in. It's extremely powerful. It's extremely important role that we play. Let's not take it for granted. If you need me, hit me up. I love you. Otherwise, I'll see you tomorrow for the Saturday shout out. Have a good night.